Most parents set out to sort of correct their own childhood experience. They set out to be the parent they wanted, right? So if you have, in terms of like bully-parent dynamics, if you had parents that were really strict or harsh or dictatorial, chances are you're going to go the opposite way. You're going to be too permissive, too generous, too accommodating, and it throws the balance off in a whole nother direction. You wind up with different problems, but equally as difficult. Every developmental phase comes with a test period. If your kid's learning to walk or learning to eat with a spoon, and they finally figure out how to find their mouth, what's the next thing they do? Push you away. I want to do it. I want to do it. So immediately when they master something, they want to get rid of you. When they start walking, do they want you holding their hand? When they start to run? I remember I saw this kid in Barnes & Noble, and I was watching the whole thing. It was so beautiful. He was strapped in, you know, in the stroller, and his wife said, his mom said, Timothy, I'm going to let you up, but you're going to just behave. You're not going to run. And, yes. And, running. He was gone. So every developmental phase comes with a test period where they want to really usurp power from you. And this is the most intense one of all. So this is the test period you really have to pass. So if you stick to the parenting that you did in elementary school, you're in for big trouble because it's different rules now. They want more of a voice. They want to be more involved. You need to be firm and flexible. You can't make you have an executive decision power that you cannot overuse because your kids will just get better at lying or fooling you. If you get a kid whose parents are really severe and super punishing, generally they get better at hiding things. That's the message. So you need to be a little more flexible, but hold to those limits and boundaries. This is a big, everyone seems to identify with these test periods, right? Yeah. So they're challenging the structure, right? The structure is you come home, you do your homework, and then you get free time.
Well, then I always said, then you're free.
Then you're free, right. So now they've decided, I come home, I do what I want, and then I do what I want, and then I do what I want, and at some point I go to bed.
And in between there, I'm yelling like a shrew.
Like a shrew?
Like I feel like I've turned into a screaming shrew at times because if I speak like this, I'm ignored.
Right.
So then the voice gets louder to be heard.
Are there two parents in the house or one?
Yes.
There are two? Where's the other one? What are they doing?
I'm sort of over the homework domain. That's sort of been my role.
That doesn't seem fair. Usually one parent, if there's an imbalance in parenting, usually you have the taskmaster parent, which generally seems to fall towards most of the time to the moms, but not always. And then you have the fun parent. Kids they will really embrace the opportunity to be more mature if you give them that chance. You say, I'm not going to police you, I'm not going to be telling you what to do all the time, it's no fun for me to do that, it's no fun for you, so let's work this out. One kid I worked with made this deal that she would get up and do her homework in the morning at 4:30. And guess what? She did.
If it works for her.
And she's like an A minus B plus student. And some kids, actually, their grades jumped because kids will do better out of spite to prove to you, they can make good decisions. But if you ride them and get them to work the way you work, if a kid is surfing the internet and instant messaging and checking his text messages and all that stuff and doing his homework and he's a good student, stay out of it. I remember this one kid said to his mother, she was like arguing over it. He goes, Ma, let me make this really simple. I'm not you. She was trying to get him to work in ways that made sense to her, and that caused so much tension. And if you really want to freak your kids out, you can always say that. Just try this when you go home tonight. You are so different from me. It's amazing. You're a completely different person. You're nothing like me. This is like their fantasy. You say this to your kids and you see them just glaze over. They don't know even how to react because they want to be different from you. So reinforce that. Join the parade. Now we're making things sound really simple here, okay? Like really easy, like parenting books say do A, B, and C. It is never that easy. Every kid is different. Every parent has a different culture within the family. Every family has a life philosophy, whether you recognize it or not. You are communicating that life philosophy through the way you communicate with each other, what you talk about at dinner. So I have this book on my shelf from a guy about treating adolescents. He's a very, very renowned therapist, and it's one of the best books I've ever read. And there's not a lot of good books out there on treating kids. He called me, and I was so excited just that I got his call, because he was like a little hero of mine. And guess what? He wanted me to see his son. This guy had all the answers. And he was really upset, and I said, "Are you serious? Well, what's going on?" He said, the short version, he kills me or I kill him, or double homicide from my wife. So we set up the appointment. A week later, he canceled the appointment. Guess what? We're canceling the appointment. What's happening? He's going to boarding school. So there are no free passes. It's very easy for me to get up here and make it sound simple. It's not. You're going to stumble. You're going to screw up. It's part of the process. A lot of parents waste too much time comparing themselves or comparing their kids. Just throw that out. You don't know what goes on behind closed doors. And you want your kid a little defiant. Defiance is not the enemy. A kid that's too cooperative or too accommodating is going to suffer from depression at some point. They're not defined enough, they're not assertive enough, and they're too dependent. So you want your kid, you want a little bit of a headache from your kid. You want them to have a little spark. Do you have any questions? We're just going right into the Q&A here. We talk about identity formation, transitions in parenting, and testing periods. That's the 3 subjects we're covering. No. Is overindulgence ever good? No. Ever good?
No.
Right.
Let him be who he is. Let him be.
No. Yes, you can let him be within limits. But everyone looks at technology. We can come up with a million reasons why kids today. How many generations of parents have been saying that? Kids today. They take the horse out now on their own. I mean, it's going on forever. What we really want to look at, especially with technology, is not the devil, or even the gaming is not the devil. When a kid comes to my office and he tells me he plays an average of 6 to 8 hours a day on weekends, there's no therapist alive who will be successful with that kid, if that's what he's going home to. So if he wants to do that, that's great. They need structure at this age. Structure binds anxiety. It soothes anxiety. They may resist school, but what happens by the middle of August? If they're totally unstructured, they completely fall apart. Even a kid who hates school secretly can't wait to go back. He needs the structure. So I would work with that. I would work with that. How much does he need?
What do you mean work with it? In other words, try and negotiate.
I had a kid who was playing games a few hours. It was constant fight in my office. And I said, Anthony, look, let's just make a decision with your mom here. How much computer time do you need a day? How much? Let's just set a clock. She won't bother you. She won't walk in the room. She won't interrupt you. How much? He said 30 minutes. We were like, deal, done. And that's what it was. For those 30 minutes were completely his. Unless the house was on fire, no one bothered him. That was more satisfying than 3 hours of interrupted, are you done, are you done, are you done, are you done? So anything you can structure around those kind of activities is going to be much more effective than just letting it go. Overindulgence is really the enemy. What we want to look at is this a problem? If they have, I talked about the 5 things every teenager needs. If they have all these things in balance, they have friends, they have attention outlets, they have hobbies, they have esteem building activities, if they have all that and they're doing fine and they're doing a lot of technology, I don't see I'm always interested in what's not working. That's what would be really interesting to me. Like what this young woman said, what you said about your son may never work in your house because you have a completely different kid. So if you take a kid who's you'll take a parenting book and read about maybe rewards and punishments, right? Sounds good. They do that in jail, right? So what happens if you have an oppositional defiant kid? Does that work? It makes things worse and worse and worse. But if you have a kid that tends towards anxiety, he's really going to need that kind of structure. He's going to be relieved when it's set. So we'd have to, rather than just make these blanket statements, we'd have to figure out what's not working. I have a few basic things with technology. Chargers should be in the living room. They're never in the bedroom. Things don't get charged in the bedroom, phones or anything like that. The tech hours, there's certain hours, technology goes off, the router goes off. You can do your homework in the morning if you want. You can do it at another time. They have to own the problem. The more that a parent comes in stressed out and raging about their kid, when the kid comes in, they are so loose. They have no concerns. The parent is holding all the stress and tension. But if you make it their problem, you figure out how to do your homework because the computer's off at 11. If that starts a fight, that's a worthy fight. If you were in an office, right, you walk into an office and everyone's at each other's throats, whatever the product they're producing is failing, the production is way down, what do you think first? Who's in charge here? But we don't do that at home. Somehow, the kids are to blame. So what you're saying is really crucial. The parents that make the most progress in therapy, and I have kids in therapy for a few years or a few months, or a kid who came back who's 38 years old to visit. The parents that take responsibility really embrace their role as a parent. The kids make much more progress. If you put your kid in therapy and leave it to the therapist, but continue doing what you're doing, what's going to happen? You make a little progress. The therapist and the kid will get along great. We'll have fun in the office, but you'll have the same problems back home. Let's say you're with a friend and you complain about your husband. And your friend says, you really should leave him. I don't know what you're doing with him. Why do you waste your time with this guy? And your job, by the way, that job you have is a joke. You could do so much better. You're not applying yourself, for God's sakes. If you applied yourself, you could have a better marriage. And this is how we would talk to our kids, right? This is how we feel free to give unsolicited advice, to attack things that they value the most, to slander their friends, to I've had parents totally destroy kids in sessions, and I sit there just gasping, and I said to one of them, is this how you behave at home? No wonder he can't stand you. So this really, you have to think about that's why we started with that idea of identifying your kid, and think, would I say this to another adult? How would I feel if someone said this to me? So if you can crawl inside that feeling, I think you'll find your way better. But right now you're on autopilot, and that's always risky. Kids hate silence. Kids tell me they would rather be beaten than their parent to withdraw from them. Not enough parents realize the value of the relationship. That is the greatest leverage you have, is your relationship with your kid. It's not the phone, it's not the computer. If you withdraw in the right amounts, it terrifies them because it initiates a reflective process. When it's quiet, they start to think about what they said or what they did, and they will come back and actually apologize. If you give them the fight, the lecture and the fight, they never go through that process. There's no maturing process. You're just the enemy they have to destroy. Does that make sense? So you shifting that dynamic with your son or daughter, that would be the cause, and the effect would manifest in their behavior. Too often we're looking to deal with the effect and not considering the cause. So a lot of times the lecturing or the judgments or the criticism are causing all these behaviors. If we can get to that, we'll get a much different outcome. Then it's really about it's about self-mastery, ultimately. If you're as impulsive as your kid and you're cursing back at your kid and squaring back, and I had a parent who had a wrestling match on the floor in front of me, a mother and daughter, on the floor when I turned to get my date book. I don't even know what happened. At that point, there is no parent. There are two children.